I wanted to walk you through the first steps of the verification process we use at Herbal Edge to assess the quality of hemp products before we bring them into our store. When I worked on the wholesale side of the CBD industry, I had to review dozens of products every week to determine what was worth putting in our catalog. It's easy enough to do on your own, so you can use this process to assess the quality of the products you're interested in. The problem is that most CBD companies are just resellers who slap their own label on a product that's made by another company. We don't work with resellers at Herbal Edge. We want to go straight to the source, so every dollar we spend goes to support these independent American makers and the farmers who support them. I'm not trying to throw any other brands under the bus, so I'll show you this review process with a company that has already passed our entire independent verification process, so you can see what it looks like when a company is doing this right. So let's review the Soulful Bee company and see if everything still holds water. The first thing I would do as a wholesaler when I got a call from a CBD company was look at their website like any consumer would. I'm going to look for just a few basic indicators that I can assess the claims that they're making objectively. The first thing I'm going to look for is lab results. And right here at the top of the Soulful Bee website, we see lab results linked in the header. That's not good enough. We have to actually go and read the lab results. There's a huge issue in this industry where companies are redacting or editing or falsifying lab tests. In some cases, they're not performing lab tests and they're hoping you won't notice. In other cases, they're linking their products to other product lab tests in an attempt to sort of disguise the fact that they either haven't done their testing properly or they did their testing and it came back bad. So we go to their page, certificates of analyses. And if we click on any of these links, we should see a PDF, not an image file, of the test from the lab. And we're just going to read through this carefully and make sure that everything's in order. You don't have to know any laboratory science for this part of the exercise. The first thing we're going to do is check to see what lab performed the test. In this case, it's the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. That's a state-run lab. So even if you didn't know that lab was run very well, you can assume as a state-run lab, not just a state-certified lab, they are actually running a tight ship over there. I've been working with that particular laboratory to do independent testing for many years now, and so when I see these tests, I know these people have their paperwork in order. The next thing you want to see is that the company that you are shopping at has actually requested these lab tests. They're not being ported over from some other company. So we see Soulful Bee listed here as the client. That's excellent. You either want to see the company that you're shopping at, or sometimes you might see the parent company. Things can get a little confusing there. In this case, it's all very straightforward. The next thing we want to see here is that the name of the product that was tested matches the name of the product that you're interested in. This is a very classic bait and switch in the CBD industry. You click on a lab test on a product page, and it takes you to a test for a different product. They're hoping you're going to skip the first page and go straight to the lab tests. We're going to verify all this information. This is a picture of the product that we were looking at. That's very important too. If the picture doesn't match, it's not the end of the world, but I always like to see a picture there, because what you can do if you were looking to falsify lab tests is you can send a different product under the name of your product, and then you'll get lab test results that look like they're test results for your product. It's a mess. The next thing you want to make sure you see is a batch number. What some companies will do is they'll black out or redact portions of this first page here, and they'll say, well, we didn't want somebody to steal our lab results and post it as if it were their own, so we blacked out our batch numbers. This is exactly the opposite of what you would want to do if you were a company who was trying to stop other people from stealing your lab results. If you redact the lab test, it becomes less specific. So when you see that batch number, you can correlate that directly to a product. If you order from this company, that test should be valid for the batch that they send you, or they should be able to send you the test for the product that you have. If they can't do that, it's a huge red flag, because you don't really know what you're taking, and you don't know if they know what you're taking. They might not have run their tests. We're going to check the date that this test was actually performed. We want to see that the test was performed recently. I was reviewing a company last week, and all of the tests they sent me were 5 to 8 years old. I'm like, are you telling me that you're going to sell me 5 to 8 year old products, or are you not sending me current lab tests? And I didn't get a response. That's also very common in the industry. So here in the lab tests, you should be able to do a little math and verify that the product label matches what these test results say. There's a lot of different cannabinoids that can cause intoxication. This is a wellness company. We're not trying to get people high, so we want to see non-detectable quantities or zero quantities for these compounds. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the active compounds, the things that appear on the label. So CBD, CBG, CBN, whatever's in your product, you should see a quantity on the lab test. And you can do a little math and figure out if the amount that showed up in the test was similar to the amount that's on the label. Another classic bait and switch in the CBD industry years ago was simply to underdose the CBD in the final product. So if they labeled it as a 20 or 25 milligram dosage, they might only have 5 or 7 milligrams of CBD in it. This is why we all know to ask for lab testing nowadays. So on this lab test here in the total section, we see the appropriate amount of CBD based on the label of the product that you can see in the image on the first page. And we see non-detectable quantities of THC. It's exactly what we're looking for. Everything's holding up right now. So the next thing we're going to do with this company is we're going to check on their social media. I want to be able to see that they're making reasonable marketing claims. There are a few companies who've gotten into hot water with the FDA for making claims that they just can't substantiate. Now, of course, the issue for you as a consumer is that if you buy products from a company that's willing to make claims that get them in trouble with the regulators, you don't know what else they're doing that might get them in trouble with the regulators. Just because they haven't been caught for falsifying lab reports or doing something else doesn't mean that they're not doing it. It just means nobody's caught on yet. So looking through their social media accounts and seeing if they're making any outrageous claims can actually protect you from things that we find out later on about how some of these companies operate. So if we look through their social media here, we're going to see a bunch of very reasonable claims because Soulful Bee is a very reasonable company. The other thing that we're going to learn is that they actually have a physical location somewhere. This is a store, and that means they have an address. And if I didn't know anything about this company, that means I can find them. That means that they exist somewhere. They're not a ghost company or a ghost brand who only exist online to relabel other products and sell them to you at a markup. So now that we know that they have a physical address somewhere, we're going to start to verify a little bit of their business information. Just earlier this week, I was reviewing a company, and I came to find out that the address they had given me was a P.O. box in Massachusetts, or Maryland, tied to a company in Wyoming owned by a holding group out of Florida. It was a big mess. I couldn't actually figure out who I was talking to and how they were related to the company that was trying to sell me these products. Now, imagine if you have a problem with one of these products, can you imagine the trouble you're going to have tracking down anybody to hold accountable? We have an address of the storefront that we saw on the social media. We're going to go ahead and look that up on Google Street View here. So if we just put in their address, we see a storefront with Soulful Bee branding on it. And there's another brand in the window up here, Elite Extraction. So we're just going to keep that in mind. As we go through the rest of this process here, that information may become helpful. So this is a real business. They have a real location. Let's see if they're registered with the state of Utah. This is a Utah-based company. They have a Utah address. If they're doing business in Utah, the state of Utah wants to know about it. So we go to the Utah Business Registry, and we see Soulful Bee exists. They have an address on record, and they have a registered agent. And look, it's Elite Extraction Services, which is just like the logo we saw in the window. Everything holds together. Everything makes sense. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to assess some of the other claims that the company is making. They claim that they're a Utah-based business. We've verified that. They claim that their products are THC-free. Their lab tests do tend to support that. Now, they also claim that their products are manufactured in a USDA-certified organic facility. And I always love to hear something like that because it means there's a paper trail. It means I should be able to find where their products are manufactured because all certified organic facilities are going to show up in the Organic Integrity Database. So if we go to the Organic Integrity Database and we search for Soulful Bee, we don't see any records, but that is not a problem yet because we also know that this company, the registered agent, is by a different name. So we run the other company's name. And the name matches the logo we saw on the window. It is USDA Organic Certified. So now we know we're dealing with a real company that actually manufactures their products, that's actually at a lab that's USDA certified organic. We've done a lot of the legwork here. The last step of the first part of our process now is to reach back out to the manufacturer, Soulful Bee, and ask them some questions that is going to tell us a little bit more about how they run their business. There's an article up on the website about how the entire process works. This is just the first steps that we take to verify some of the claims that companies make when they contact us initially. If you want to know more about how the rest of the process works and how a former CBD wholesaler assesses products, you can visit us at the link in the bio, or you can follow us. If you've got a product you'd like me to review, throw it in the comments and I'll take a look. Maybe we'll make a video out of it.